Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And in this evening's video, I wanted to do a recap of what transpired this past week. We had about 8 hours of total coverage from all analysts' days combined with AT&T. Well, starting it off with Verizon, then T-Mobile, and then AT&T last on the Friday. So I kind of wanted to break it down as briefly as I can to give you my impressions and who I think is still going to come out on top and who's going to challenge the leader or the company that I think will come out on top. So to start that off, I'll just go ahead and start off who I think will come out on top. I think it is Verizon. I'm sure many of you also see it the same way. Why does Verizon come out on top? Because they're cash intensive. They're spending more. There is a separate $10 billion investment strictly for C-band. That's one frequency. No other company has dedicated a separate funding towards this. Only Verizon. So again, Verizon is spending on the spectrum, whatever it takes, not only to get ahead or catch up. A lot of people are saying that they're still playing the catch-up role to T-Mobile because T-Mobile has had this spectrum availability and rollout happen since last year, April. But Verizon is looking to maintain their network leadership. So that's why essentially they're spending a massive amount. You gotta think of this from a different perspective. I know these companies are big. I know they're large corporations, so we don't care what they spend. We just care, is the consumer benefiting from it? And in a lot of ways they are, because the networks are going to be faster. There's going to be more capacity. So any task or any future mobility app or streaming platform that comes out, the networks are going to be able to handle it. So what are some people saying could be the big problem for Verizon as they do invest this cash that we so speak of? Why are they investing more than T-Mobile and even AT&T, which I think is the challenger in this case? They want to maintain the network leadership at all cost. That's why they spent $50 billion on C-band. That's why they're spending an additional separate $10 billion. That lets you know they want to maintain leadership. There is no question or guessing or nothing. They are showing you a action, and it's taking place now. You're going to see 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months progress. They will gain scale quickly. They're getting started this month. They're looking to be at 100 million March of 2022. So you could start seeing in October, November, December, C-band's going to light up. Boom, 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 boom. And in markets where they have the scale on their own fiber, speeds are going to be between 1 to 3 gigs on the C-band. So they're going to launch it with the newest radios. They're going to launch it with the C-band panels, the N77 that were already being used in Europe. They look very similar to the T-Mobile's N41, the smaller square. And likely that will be right around the time when the OEMs, the Ericssons and the Nokias and the Samsungs, will have the software capability ready and enabled for MU-MIMO, which of course T-Mobile is going to also be able to make use of, but speeds are going to skyrocket. They're going to be high, and Verizon is looking to spend and invest to maintain their leadership. So do they play catch up to T-Mobile? Sure. In the top 46 markets between 22 and 23, they plan to scale to 175 million pops. To get to 200 and above, they have to touch more sites, which they can do it at the end of 23 when that clears. Does Verizon work ahead? Yes. This is going to be very reminiscent to the XLTE AWS rollout. They did that in massive clusters. It was very quickly. They did it ahead of schedule. So the equipment was added. And then once it was fully cleared to be turned on, it was turned on by a flip of a switch. So I'm looking forward to that strategy being the complete same. I don't see that any different. This time, I see that accelerated and even more faster because of that extra spend. Verizon CTO said it during the analyst day. This is going to be the fastest mid-band rollout or fastest higher frequency rollout you will ever see. Do I believe them? Yes, because the money and the actions are there. There is no doubting it. It's going to happen. So that's how I feel about Verizon. Are there some other concerns and questions? Sure. How fast does home internet scale? Why haven't they announced any numbers of the product, of the home internet product that's already out there? That remains to be seen. They have 5 growth vectors or sectors, as they call them. The track phone deal is still not completed, so we're waiting on that to hear more insight and info. We really need that. That track phone deal is important from the aspect of what did they actually do with it. Does it matter to the company? Does it mean anything? I don't think it does. If track phone, if let's just say that deal never happens, Verizon goes on as they are. It doesn't change anything. But I think we need to hear, okay, are they gonna downsize the brands into one? Are we gonna, are they trying to pursue an upsell of these customers? So there's many different points that and questions that people have about that track phone deal. Again, the analysts that did ask questions on the call, it almost seems like they were handpicked, hand-selected bankers that were just worried about money. I didn't like some of the questions that were asked. They just weren't very specific and very straightforward. And I'm not saying that, that I would do a better job, but I think if properly thought out and written down, I think the questions could be much, much more specific and maybe even catch Verizon off guard to a point where they're like, hey, I can't answer that. So, and that's just not with Verizon. I saw that on the analyst day for all the other carriers, not very specific. So moving on to who I think will place themselves number 2. Remember, there's no expiration date in the wireless industry. It's a ongoing. Yes, there might be a advantage now because a carrier got started earlier, but I think AT&T will position themselves properly to move into that second place. Why does that happen? They're going to spend more. It's just basic. It's just very basic here. The wireless industry it's kind of very basic because it is so expensive. So there's no corner cutting or really any of that in the wireless industry. It's very expensive. You have to roll out densification, so that means you have to roll out equipment, radios in abundance, backup generators in abundance. The only way to accelerate that and to make sure that you have that at massive scale is to spend money. So therefore, I think over time, not short term perhaps, but midterm to translating into longer term, I think AT&T positions themselves into second, and there is a slight chance that they can knock on Verizon's door in terms of network dominance. So to kind of briefly recap, AT&T is going to dedicate $6 to $8 billion on C-band, less than Verizon. I get it, I understand. Between the year 22 and 24. So AT&T is going to scale C-band at a very quick pace. Why are they not accelerating it or wanting to match Verizon or exceed them? There's just no need. AT&T's network is performing at levels it has never performed before. And now that they have a capital allocation for densification, it's going to perform even better in the future. People are seeing and sending me 2, 3, 4, 500 megabits per second on AT&T's LTE. In some cases, it's even rivaling T-Mobile's N41. So that's massive. That's a massive showing that'll let you know, like, hey, this is starting to make sense. AT&T is starting to pick it up, and they're starting to knock on that door of the network dominance. So how did they achieve the network dominance if they only purchased 80 megahertz of C-band, far lower than Verizon, and they, they're below 100 megahertz channel. T-Mobile has more, Verizon has more. So how do they get there? So the way I think they get there is, again, they spend, right? So just think of the 6 to 8 billion on C-band, and I don't think that's the whole entire story, because they did not announce a guidance for 22 or 23. So there's more to be said on that. They just announced a capital allocation for densification that makes them very dangerous. They have 92 megahertz of the lower I would say sub 3 gigahertz spectrum. That includes band 30s, 2.3, the AWS, the PCS. They got 92 megahertz on average nationwide. It's a bit fragmented, but they essentially have more mid-band below 3 gigahertz than they actually got C-band. And they got a very strong low-band position as well. That's one. So they can start, refarming some of that mid-band. Then we start seeing N2, N66, N30. So those are some very solid NR combos that they could start refarming and moving over to the NR side. So that's one step. Then, of course, number 2, HBO Max. Why do I mention HBO Max in wireless? It's a huge revenue and money driver to help them increase capital investment in a ever so intensive, cash intensive wireless industry. They could easily raise capex now without having to answer too many questions. They are predicting a $15 billion revenue stream by 2025. That's absolutely insane. That is something that Verizon and T-Mobile just can't match. Even their home internet is likely not to get to that kind of revenue, because it's competing in a lot of markets against other players. So if they grab 10%, 15%, cool, that's fine, but they're still competing against the other fiber players and the the ones that are priced fairly low. So there's competition in that market. That's why T-Mobile announced 7 to 8 million by 2025, which is a very low-balling prediction, but they know there's competition in that space, and there are chances that people will leave the services after using them. It's fixed wireless is good. It's meant to bring competition, and for some it will work, but for some it just won't get the job done. And I do see some of those customers churning. So yeah, I think AT&T's HBO Max plays into wireless big time now, especially that there's an ad-supported version that could make its way to prepaid and the lower-end plans. I think that's massive. And then fiber plays into that too, because they discussed that on the Analyst Day. How do they penetrate walls? They do it with the fiber in terms of business and consumer. They don't want to penetrate your house with fixed wireless, because they ran a big, massive analysis that uplink is now as important, if not more important, than downlink. The only thing right now that can supply that type of symmetric speed is fiber. They can go 900 by 900 or 1,000 by 1,000. So that fits the needs of some of the bigger households more than fixed wireless ever could. Some of these 20, 30, 40, 50 megabits per second uplinks are fine, but if you're uploading larger files or larger YouTube videos, it could take a while to get that task completed with using fixed wireless. So AT&T's not doing that. So again, the capacity that they're putting out in the market is not bogged down or too constrained by too many users. It's mainly for wireless, because they're penetrating the house with fiber, which they said they're touching 3 million more households this year. Yes, they can't scale it as fast as fixed wireless. I mean, T-Mobile's doing 15 million households, every quarter or so. So they're scaling it very quickly because, of course, airways can reach further. But I still think long term and churn wise, fiber is the better option for AT&T. It definitely is. So yes, I do think with the small cells incorporating some of the millimeter wave and then the C band, I do think AT&T positions themselves right back into that number two. They go 6 to 8 billion on C band. They likely spend a heftier amount even on the densification project. I've been told it's 36 months, but I've also been told it's going to be ongoing after the 36 months. Maybe not at a pace that we're going to witness over the next 36 months, but they're still going to start plugging in densification at a very needed. It's needed badly for them because that's how they unlock and unleash the full benefits of C-band and make it a continuous coverage. It's due with densification. They've lacked that in a lot of markets. They mainly kept their HSPA footprint, which was on low band, and that's kind of the grid that they kept. They did plug it in some bigger markets like New York City, LA, Chicago. But recently, speaking with a couple of buddies, they still stand on their ground that even in LA and the Chicagos and New York City, AT&T still lacks the densification even in those markets. So that's coming. How is it coming? They're investing. They've made wireless a priority. HBO Max, I don't even know why it's being really discussed. It's a no-brainer that works. That works out for them. That is the best purchase they've likely made was Time Warner. That HBO Max product is going to be massively, insanely valuable for them, more so than anything. So that's why I think AT&T will position themselves once again and move into that second slot, and this time around even compete and inch closer to number one, Verizon. So last but not least, T-Mobile in third place. I think some are torn on that. Some are saying, some will tell you that T-Mobile will be first. If that's your opinion, that's fine. I think over time, like 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now, I think they fall right back into that third spot, with Dish hopefully eventually moving into that fourth spot, and then we have that fourth player competition again, competitiveness. And the reason I say T-Mobile moves into that third slot, do they get better? Yes, the network is performing at levels never seen before. Finally unlocking the true potential of the N41 that Sprint could have done during LTE. So, well, then why do I say T-Mobile falls into third place? Well, they're going a completely different route now from what was originally presented. Last year, when they started the rollout of N41 and the CapEx, the capital allocation, they did not spend a full year's worth. No way. I looked at the numbers again. It was like 9.7 billion last year that they spent on the network. Most of that coming in the second half of the year. So this year, they are set to spend 11.7 to 12 billion, which is fine, which is going to help them accelerate. They have a lot to do. They got the Sprint numbers to fulfill, the keep sites. They want to have that done by the end of next year. So that's going to start in May. So there's a separate capital allocation for that. Then they have decommissioning of sites. They got some store leases they need to cut out. So those are a lot of the upfront payments that need to be made to fully realize the synergies. And then the following year, in 22, they spend another, which I predict will be 11.7 to 12 billion. And then that will help them kind of finish out the Sprint keep sites to add that additional densification. And then they will have to further move along on the network integration, which they will do. There's still sites out there that don't have band 71, N71. In fact, there's sites out there still that have no low band at all. So they'll have to work through that as well. Those are some of the things they don't tell you on the surface. You have to dig deeper to get that info. For some It's just going, driving around the neighborhood, being familiar with where the sites are, and then saying, hey, there's only mid band here. There's no low band. So that's something that they'll have to work through. And then as they accelerate these next 2 years, in year three, the guidance is to lower capex. That is a huge red flag, in my opinion. Again, just look at Sprint. Sprint did it. It didn't work out for them. Sprint had a capex that was a front and back loaded. Then all of a sudden it was lowered. And after that, it was a wrap. Sprint's, everything slowed down. Because when you go lower on capex, you have to start prioritizing, because a lot of these bigger markets take a huge chunk of capital. LA, New York, Philly, Chicago, those take a good amount of your capital allocation. And the only way to spread out more of that money is you have to go higher on your capital. Verizon just said they're spending an extra $10 billion on top of the 17.5 to 18.5. That is massive. AT&T is staying at the 21 billion level of their capital investment. That's massive. T-Mobile, we're going to go down to 9 to 10 billion starting in 2023. I don't think that cuts it. That doesn't cut it. They still have a massive obligation to expand in rural America. That includes the agreement with the local California municipality that they reach 100%. It was like 300 megabits per second across all of California. That in itself is a massive investment that's going to cost them billions. So I don't know how they reach parity with the competition by lowering their capital. It just makes no sense. This equipment is likely to get more expensive. The tower sites, they still take time. Nothing has changed on that. There's still likely a 2 to 3 year period in some cases to get one site up if a new site is needed. So, and even a co-location in some areas out there could take 6 to 12 months. So there's definitely some questions that need answers. Let's just put it that way. I have to really ask them, why is the capex lowering? If they come in at the lower end, let's say they come in at the 9 billion, they really only spend 4 billion more versus when they were a standalone. They could have just stayed T-Mobile and not complete the merger. But again, that's a topic for another video. But again, I think over time, as we get deeper into the 5G, I think Verizon is going to position themselves to be the leader again, number one. Number two, AT&T. And then T-Mobile will likely smoothly fall back into that third spot. That third spot keeps them competing, it keeps them growing, and it keeps them making money. Do they want to be number one? Of course they do. But they can't be number one or get to number one if they lower their capital. I don't see that being a good sign. They have now the home internet to worry about, which is another thing that I wanted to mention. I don't see them scaling densification to meet the needs of home internet. So once they reach that cutoff for those customers, that's likely going to be it. To not put such a massive strain on the network and make it a lesser experience for the wireless side. So they probably keep that very strategic and in place as to maybe why they projected the number 7 to 8 million. They're probably not going to open the entire floodgates too much. Like taking in 80% of neighborhoods is likely not going to be their goal. It puts too much of a strain on the bandwidth. It's just a fact. People have 7, 8, 9, 10 devices in the household now. We got video game systems, we got phones, laptops, and there's other stuff that you connect now to the Wi-Fi, your home security. So there will be a cutoff for T-Mobile is what I predict. And I predict the same for Verizon. Millimeter wave is likely a bandwidth that can hold more people in a certain neighborhood. So I think they do accelerate that and keep that at a similar pace. But T-Mobile didn't even talk about millimeter wave during the analyst day. So what, to their investors, what is that even? Is that even a thing? The layer cake, I think, was mentioned once or twice, but we're not seeing a definitive plan that states, okay, millimeter wave is going to go here, here, and there. We're going to start building small cells. I mean, their small cell plan was at 50,000. It's been that since 2017. That was their plan as a standalone. I don't even think that was an integrated Sprint revenue or Sprint money, post-merger plan. I don't think they've ever deviated from that 50,000 small cells. That was the plan under Neville standalone network. So, again, they don't seem to be big fans of small cells. That will likely come back to bite them in the behind. AT&T and Verizon are big fans of small cells. Centralized RAN is coming. Millimeter wave nodes are going on those small cells. CBRS is coming with that small cell. So there's lots of additional densifying on top of the densification from the macros that AT&T and Verizon are going to accomplish with this. And that will likely get them into that number one, number two competitive debate back and forth. And then that's what likely will move T-Mobile back into that third place. So let me know what you think about this in the comment section down below. I know this was a longer video, but I wanted to get that out the way on this Sunday. So this upcoming week, we're cleared and free to go for whatever comes next. If you have been on the channel or you're new to the channel and you have not yet liked, shared, subscribed, make sure you do so. Hit the notification bell so you are notified when the content does go live. Make sure to follow the social media outlets for more updates and interactions. Thanks again for watching. This is Tyrone with Tech Life, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.